All right, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome back. Man, I don't even know how I want to start this off, to be honest with you. It is good to be back. It's been, like 6 months since we've made our last video. I've just been crazy busy, and I've been procrastinating like crazy. I mean, I said that I needed to set up the new studio at the new place. Obviously, this looks a little bit different from what you're used to. But yeah, it took me 5 seconds. I just put up my little camera stick. I put up the lights and such, flipped open the laptop, and now we're rocking and rolling again. It's great. And yeah, it's just been busy with tax season. The new business is coming along very well. I'm not even prospecting for clients, but people are coming to me wanting me to perform services for them, give them advice on certain tax things and accounting things and stuff like that, which has been very cool because I've actually gotten the opportunity to meet some of you guys, and unfortunately I couldn't meet you guys at Monerotopia. That would have been sick, but just couldn't make it this time around. Very sorry. Hopefully next year. But it's honestly like my tax season didn't even end. It's just, I run into this thing consistently where like people, they don't want to, play nice and play with the accountant throughout the year. They honestly just want to like push it to the side because who wants to think about accounting when they're rocking and rolling with their business? But it's something you got to do. And unfortunately, what people do is when they need a loan or they need financial statements, they come to us and say, hey, could you guys get this for me because I kind of need some money, and the only way I can get money is if my accounting is done. And sorry, I forgot about that over the last like 2 years or whatever. But tell me what you need, and then like we got to get 100 statements. We've got to do like so much stuff, and so that's what it's been over the last few weeks for me after tax season. It honestly feels like it didn't even end. Just a lot of work has been needing to be done, and so finally I got everything set up, which is great. I've been posting more on Twitter. I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's been a lot going on. Certainly you guys have noticed, and one of the first things I asked when I got back was, hey, so what's been going on? Like, what changes in Monero have there been? What new developments are there? And the big thing that a lot of the Monero bros told me was Monero had made an update to make it so that the ordinal problem, which is now becoming a big problem apparently in Bitcoin, and apparently people are starting to do it on Litecoin too. So it's like a crypto renaissance honestly happening right now at this ordinals thing where people are making JPEGs and pictures and are inscribing them into the blockchain and are taking up a huge amount of space, and it's causing fees to go nuclear and everything like this. Apparently, the Monero developers had done things to mitigate this because they figured that this would be a problem, which I think was a great idea, and I think most Monero bros figured would be a great idea. There were actually some tabs I forgot to pull up in regards to that because I wanted to discuss that. But basically, Monero has already cut that off at the bud, which is one of the great advantages of Monero that, for whatever reason, the Bitcoin bros really can't seem to appreciate. I mean, there are always developments happening. There are always updates happening. And it's keeping up with the times, which is what you would expect technology to do. But for whatever reason, there's some in the community who just think like you can just create something and just not have it evolve with the world. And for whatever reason, people are just going to continue to use it as such. And people think like that's what makes it gold-like. But there are technologies which are built on top of gold, which I guess people would say is like what's happening with Bitcoin. But, it's questionable how much different those technologies are from the technologies which are being built on top of gold. Because with the layer 2s and 3s that are coming on top of Bitcoin, you're going to have a lot more custody because it's that much more complicated. And when things are more complicated, you delegate responsibilities because it's like, well, I don't have the time to deal with this. I'm a businessman, blah, 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 blah. So whatever, I'm just going to custody. And then at that point, it's just like, okay, why don't we just go back to a gold standard? And I actually put a poll on my Twitter. I pinned it up there if you guys want to vote in the poll for the next 3 days, asking you if you had custody, third-party custody, which was assumed to be the case, would you go with a Bitcoin standard or a gold standard? Now, as of now, the basis is yes. Let's just go with the gold standard. Like that's what 80% of you guys are saying. And this is to my audience. This is to the people on my feed who are crypto bros, right? I mean, there are some people who are big into Bitcoin, a lot of people are big into gold, but I think, you know, with my audience, there's somewhat of an unbiased approach. And the fact that 80% of you are saying that, yeah, a gold standard would be better than a Bitcoin standard, if we're assuming third-party custodianship being the norm, then I think that's significant because that seems to be where Bitcoin is going. And it's strange being off Twitter, and it's strange being away from the conversation for so long and coming back and seeing that as almost a foregone conclusion that, yeah, with everything going on now with the ordinals and with transaction fees going up and with the presumption of adoption by millions or billions of people, yeah, fees are going to go sky high. We're going to need more layers. And the presumption there with what we've seen with Lightning Network just over the last couple of years, we've made many videos on this talking about this, there's going to be a lot more custodianship. And there already is a lot of custodianship with people just like putting their crypto onto Coinbase or other exchanges because like self-custody is almost too much to ask of people. And so it's going to be an interesting development moving forward because one thing that I have thought about recently, and we'll get to the content right after this, is just there's so much to catch up on, obviously being gone for so long. But I've realized, I think that at the base level of the disagreement that some people in our community have with the Bitcoin bros comes down to a very philosophical problem, or at least difference. And I was able to actually conceptualize this when I was reading this book. This is called The Mystagogy of the Holy Spirit by St. Photius. Now, you may be asking, okay, well, that sounds like Christian woo-woo. What's going on with this? How does that connect with what's going on in the crypto world? And I'll talk about that later in the video, but just to give a primer, it seems to be what happened back in 2017 during the block size wars was a bifurcation in philosophical presuppositions about what cryptocurrency was. You had the people who were in Roger Ver's camp and the Bitcoin Cash camp who wanted to raise the block size, who were basically saying that cryptocurrency is a functional technology. It's more than Bitcoin. There's an essence to the idea of crypto, which is what we should always be striving ever more towards, asymptotically, as close as possible, as sort of like a platonic idea. We should be striving towards decentralization. We should be striving towards privacy. We should be moving away from third-party custodianship. And it should be functionable to most of the population, which means fees are cheap and it's relatively quick to transact. Those are the things which are the basis for cryptocurrency, and that's what gives it a unique use case. That's why the idea of it really was revolutionary and popular, because it's like, okay, well, we don't need banks. We don't need PayPal. We don't need these other third-party institutions, and we don't need the current monetary system anymore. Or gold or whatever, because gold to some degree implies third-party custodianship if you've got a lot of it, or you have the divisibility problem with it to some degree. It's like, wow, we've really created something unique here that solves a very fundamental problem to the human experience. And that philosophy, that crypto provides unique use case, and we can further evolve towards this use case with evolutionary developments in the technology, that was one philosophy that moved away from the other philosophy which had been forming at the time, that some people think was astroturfed by Blockstream, which, as a lot of you know, is invested in by some pretty nefarious figures like Mastercard, and we talked about the Digital Currency Group forever here on the channel, and other people who are rather connected pretty deeply with the legacy financial system. And their philosophy was the establishment of a kind of Bitcoin orthodoxy, a crypto orthodoxy, where what's important isn't the platonic ideal of cryptocurrency and the maximization of its potential and its function in whatever cryptocurrency comes about, whether it's Bitcoin Cash or Monero or Zano, which I'm going to talk more about. I'm pretty stoked about Zano, but what it's about is staying true to the one crypto that rules them all, which is Bitcoin. It's the prioritization of the particular instead of the asymptotic move towards the abstract ideal. And I think that is where the split happened, because now people, in the face of overwhelming evidence that like the crypto is just not going, like Bitcoin is just not going to work for mass adoption, and it's going to have significant hurdles to overcome that introduce major risk to any rational investor or a potential participant of the network. It's becoming obvious that it's not about moving towards optimal cryptocurrency and using optimal cryptocurrency for the function itself. It's about staying loyal to this sort of orthodox religion which was established around Bitcoin. And I think that is ultimately the discrepancy. You have the people in our camp who will use whatever crypto works ultimately, and that's why I've talked about different cryptos on the channel, other than Monero, even though I think Monero is awesome. I think it's got the best cred out there for being a privacy coin. It's the best privacy coin, most trusted, and I think it's going to go super hyper mega nuclear. I mean, come on. I still maintain that, obviously, but it's more about the function of the crypto and being able to use private decentralized peer-to-peer cash rather than sticking it out with one crypto through hell or high water. And so I think that's the ultimate distinction now. And now that I understand that, I no longer am frustrated or aghast at what I'm seeing on Twitter now. And let me tell you, over the past 6 months, the discourse has, like, it's gone down bad on crypto Twitter. Like, the quality of the discourse, it's bad now. Like, during this whole fee phenomenon, where fees have been skyrocketing, I'm seeing people in the Bitcoin camp now saying, well, you just can't make these people happy. It's just like, when fees are low, they're saying the fees aren't high enough because the security is not going to work. And then, if the fees are high, then now you got a problem because you don't think it's going to be adopted. It's like, well, yeah, it's obviously a cost-benefit analysis. This is, something that we've been saying forever. It's honestly, it's something that you can't win at. It's an unwinnable dilemma. It's not like we're saying it's got to be one or the other. We're telling you that the way that the blockchain is established is something that has to change in order for you to meet the qualifications of mass adoption, where it's easy for people to use, and you have security. You need both if you want your crypto to be the crypto to rule them all. But they can't even maintain that premise. And so you can't even have rational debates where you discuss cost-benefit analysis, worthy trade-offs, and things like this. And so it's at the point now where I understand there's a fundamental philosophical difference, and that actually gives me a little bit of peace. But we'll talk more about that in the video. The video is going to be long. And the unique thing about this video, I think, is we're not going to get into any current events about the world as we typically do, because, we look at, shortages in other parts of the world and price controls and the future technocracy and things like this. And it makes us believe that, Monero is going to be very important and it's probably going to go super hyper mega nuclear. But we're going to focus on sort of what's going on in the crypto realm today because I think this makes us feel very good about our position. So let's get into the content. Man, it's really been quite a while. It's been quite a while. Leave comments. How have you guys been? Back by popular demand. I mean, you guys have really wanted me to come back. I mean, I've been getting messages rather consistently lately, and it's good that you guys missed the vids. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't follow Monero. So we're going to start off with great developments taking place in the Monero sphere, of course, because as much as there is to say about the problems with other cryptos, it's cool to kind of check out the developments going on in our own world and what's making our own lives a lot better and easier, because the more that we have developments like the ones we're about to see, the more use case Monero has, and the more that we can opt out of this satanic mark of the beast system. So check it out. Monero, which is one of my favorite projects out there, which is made by, I think, a guy named Riot, who's a DJ bro, who I think was at Monerotopia recently. He's made some updates where he says big Monerica update coming soon. If you don't know what Monerica is, it's basically like a big yellow pages for Monero Bros. So it's got businesses, communities, different online stores, exchanges that all accept Monero. And from what I see, Monero adoption online is booming. You've got the Monero Marketplace where you can go, and it's sort of like a ClearNet market where you can buy legal things from Monero, which is awesome. So that's blowing up from what I can see. There's a bookstore we're about to get to, but this has all of those developments on there, and it's consistently being updated. So if you have a business, I suggest you go to Monerica and you tell him, hey, I got a business, put my website up there, and he'll put it up there, which is pretty sweet. And my website, I think, is the first listing on the website. So, maybe there's a little bit of a bias here, and maybe there's some self-interest. But as I was talking about before, I'm an accountant, and I do accept Monero. Here's my website, bare bookkeeping and tax. It's not totally complete, but honestly, it doesn't need to. It's just like an online business card of sorts, just as sort of a stopping place for people to see what I do and what's up. But yeah, this is what we got going on. There's yours truly right there, smirking, looking smart with those glasses. Man, what a stud. And you can earn a 5% discount on all your services for using Monero, which is pretty cool. Let me just make sure it's getting all up in there. Okay, yeah, it is cool. So yeah, that's my website. But yeah, check out Monerica. It's pretty sweet. We got to grow the parallel economy. And let me know if you guys have businesses. We used to do the Monero Marketing Mondays, which was sweet. And we used to talk about different businesses which are accepting this stuff, which really ranges into many different categories. I mean, there are like people who do advertising. I think even manufacturers are taking this stuff, which kind of blows my mind because that's sort of a big scale operation. But it's pretty dope, pretty dope. Another thing, raise funds for your project, startup, or charity with Monero. And so this is like a fundraiser project that somebody just came out with that I just saw like 10 minutes ago. And apparently you can receive Monero directly into your wallet without any fees. You can withdraw Monero to local Monero. It's 100% KYC free. So if you've got an idea, oh man, like I'm just now reading this. This reminds me of the Canadian Freedom Coin thing. No. The Canadian Freedom Convoy. That's it. Yeah, you guys remember a year ago, right? When there were a bunch of truckers and they went to Canada and people were trying to donate money to them because obviously it was a tyrannical situation up there, still largely is, and people were supporting what they were doing by sending money to the truckers, and so people started to use PayPal. They started to get kicked off PayPal. People started to use what's the GoFundMe, and it got shut down by the authorities. People started to use GiveSendGo. That got shut down by the authorities, and so people started to send Bitcoin. And then they started to trace the Bitcoin back to the donors. Those people got hauled into court in many cases, and we had our Monero Bro General Zaptosis go out there and get people on board to Monero, which was a huge deal. I think it was a huge deal at the time. Big win, big success. And now we've got this development, which was maybe inspired by that whole thing, where you can essentially do, from what I understand just by looking at this, kind of what you can do with GiveSendGo or GoFundMe, but with Monero. So that's pretty sweet. And by the way, you've got view and spend keys, so people can see what you're doing with the money to some degree, which would probably, I imagine, be somewhat of a prerequisite if you're going to set yourself up on this. But yeah, zero fees, no middlemen, no deplatforming, very key, no ID or bank account required. So yeah, that's pretty sweet, man. That's really sweet. I love to see it. Go check it out. Oh, this tweet has been deleted. So maybe that was a development that wasn't happening. I have no idea. But this is the Monero bookstore. This is pretty sweet. This actually just came out very recently, May 2023, so this month. And so you can go buy books with Monero, which is dope. I've been reading a lot of books recently, history books. It's really interesting, the history of Byzantium. I strongly suggest looking into that. I mean, that is probably one of the most interesting periods of human history that there is. I mean, because you've got, I'm not going to go into all that. I could talk for hours about that. But yeah, you could buy books there. Put your books up for sale from Monero. You've got Robert Greene already up there. Pretty dope. Very nice, very nice. And then we've got some more news in the dark web sphere. Let me just make sure I'm recording. We're at 20 minutes already. Oh my gosh. Okay. Zenu, our buddy Zenu, cool guy, give him a follow. He says, ASAP Market, one of the largest DNMs currently. Let me make sure I'm not blocking the text because I'm up here. Yeah, I think I should be down here, right? I forgot how it was before. Yeah, because you guys wanted to see the URLs and stuff. So, yeah. So that will do. Let me just keep the stuff up here. So ASAP Market, one of the largest DNMs currently, has switched to XMR only. They joined fellow large DNM, and DNM is Darknet Marketplace, Archetype Market, as leading the charge for broader Monero adoption. There is no current frontrunner for largest darknet marketplace, but there is a frontrunner for most used cryptocurrency on there. Sounds like Monero to me. And what's interesting about this statement, because I analyzed this statement, and what you'll notice is that it doesn't say anything about privacy on here. It says the following. It says, we have an important announcement to make regarding Bitcoin transaction fees. As you may be aware, Bitcoin transaction fees have recently spiked, making it costly for our users to transact using Bitcoin. Due to this, we are enforcing our users to use Monero instead of Bitcoin for all transactions on our platform. So it has nothing to do with the privacy, apparently. It probably has some consideration, right? It's safer for the people running the website to use Monero because, as we've seen in past videos, there have been marketplaces where, like, one Bitcoin transaction, which had bad OPSEC, was able to be unraveled back to the servers where I guess this thing was connected to, and people got caught. And apparently, though, that wasn't part of this analysis or this decision. It was the high transaction fees, and it was the long wait times, I imagine, if you want a low transaction fee, that it took to clear your transaction. Because there's like 400,000 transactions waiting in the meme pool right now in order to go. But if people are consistently upbidding the fee, then your transaction may just not go, right? Unless it takes just like a very long time. And so for just utility function purposes, they're ditching Bitcoin, which really says a lot. And Grampy, he's always kind of funny. He says, this changes nothing. Bitcoin is a store of value. I simply atomic swap to Monero and spend $15 on a transaction fee. And when I need to make a purchase, then just swap back, spend another $15. This is the ultimate way to use cryptocurrency. So, yeah, it's kind of funny, right? But we'll get to more of that analysis because there's a lot to say about that. Because according to the Bitcoin bros, the prominent Bitcoin bros, this is exactly how it should be working. High fees, long wait times. This is exactly what we want. I'm not even making that up. That's what they'll say. So that's pretty cool. They're saying some vendors may be willing to pay high fees on the withdrawals, and that's okay. However, we suggest that all vendors enforce their users to use Monero to avoid high transaction fees. We believe that using Monero will provide our users with a better experience and reduce the cost of transactions significantly. So pretty crazy. And I guess they're getting a lot of tickets because people are complaining about how long it's taking and how expensive it is, and it's really not even their fault. It's just they're using bad cryptocurrency. So, and you're going to see this trend continue, right? You're going to see this trend continue because business people are not going to deal with this, okay? And I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. But I'd mentioned before that Roger Ver was on the one side of the debate when it came to the block size wars and having the ideal be functionality of cryptocurrency, not necessarily allegiance to a particular currency, right? It's because he's a businessman. He's a practical guy. He's trying to deal with real-world current problems, not future hypotheticals where you're using utilitarian philosophy and like libertarian philosophy and saying, hey, we're going to beat the state if we all get behind one thing and blah, 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 right? Like, it's just like, no, dude, I just need to buy food. Like, I'm not going to spend $25 when I need to buy food for my family in El Salvador. And I actually made a post in response to this lady who's like, yeah, $25. It's a perfectly reasonable cost for a transaction that's uncensorable. Not realizing that you just censored probably like half of the world population with a transaction fee that high. But I was like, yeah, dear Africa, you could have a Bitcoin transaction or 200 chicken nuggets from Burger King. I mean, what are you going to pick, right? Now, frankly, I'd probably pick the Bitcoin transaction because those chicken nuggets from Burger King, let me tell you, the medical bills, you'll suffer from eating those things way higher than the nuggets, bro. But let's go back into this. Here's another development going on that I haven't really talked too much about on the channel, but I have had Zano as a coin that I've accepted for donation for like a year and a half or so, right? Because I was talking to this guy Gigabytes like a year ago. He had just out of the blue messaged me. He's like, "Hey, you ever check out Zano?" I'm like, no, I haven't. And I'm always skeptical of new projects. I've looked into all these different projects, and everyone's trying to show me their coins. And I was like, oh, let's talk to this guy for a little bit, see what's up. Turns out he's a freaking brilliant genius. And he totally understands this philosophy that we have, which is to try to make the best money possible. And he's brilliant. And that's what you'll find with a lot of people in this space. They get it, right? And after looking into Zano for a really long time, I realized that this is a really high quality form of cryptocurrency. And the team is great. Roger Ver seems to be behind this project. I mean, he's liked a couple of my posts about Zano, so he's searching through the hashtags or whatever, looking for Zano things. And they have got escrow function. They're going to have this thing called confidential assets, which I don't really care about. It's kind of cool. But the escrow function, the cheap transaction costs, makes it a viable, cool cryptocurrency. And it's going to be a hybrid of proof of stake and proof of work. Now, I know a lot of you are skeptical of proof of stake, but they made a presentation on it, I think, at Monerotopia, which I'm looking forward to watching, and you should too. And essentially what you're going to be able to do is have private yield, essentially. Because if you can stake your coins privately, which is what Arcanum does, then you can essentially earn yield privately, which is going to be, I think, pretty attractive to a lot of people. And they're going to be developing a lot of things like decentralized peer-to-peer marketplaces, and that's already somewhere here, right? I thought I had, the Zano Bazaar. So somebody had already made a marketplace that is linked through the API of Zano, and you can start posting stuff on there too. And I think it's a great idea if you're a small business to just get involved with Monero Marketplace, Zano Bazaar, and some of these other marketplaces which use these private cryptocurrencies. Because I'm telling you, this is going to get ever more important. This is going to become a big deal. And if you're the first person in your particular industry to go into that space, I think there's a lot of opportunity for you. Because when people find value in a cryptocurrency, and you've got cheap transaction costs, you don't have to pay the fees, to third-party corporations like PayPal and to banks and to stuff like that. And there's some people, I'm not going to say that, but you guys know what I'm about to say in regards to skirting out of other certain expenses which are rather costly. People are going to want to do that, So that's pretty interesting. Pretty psyched about Zano. Inevitable. XMR. What's up, dude? Friend of the channel. Another development. Monero is gaining on Bitcoin. So we've been looking at the CoinCard stats for a couple of years here now. And Monero is surging. Okay? Like at some point it could actually pass Bitcoin. Now, in the United States, Monero has typically been above Bitcoin, like it's comprised like half of the transactions or transaction volume for coin card purchases. And throughout the world, it's been a little bit behind Bitcoin, but it's surged above Ethereum because I think it used to be behind Ethereum actually, and now it's 7% away from eclipsing Bitcoin, which is kind of a big deal. Again, that goes back to the functionality and the use case, right? And especially with fees right now, if fees stay at $15 to $20, okay, and you want to buy a $100 gift card, are you going to use Monero or Bitcoin? Seriously. I mean, it's almost like we don't even have to entertain this idea. But you got Lightning Network down here at about 4%. Pretty interesting. But yeah, you're seeing a lot more use case there, which is pretty cool. Elizabeth Ethereum, happy to announce the beta release of Ethereum XMR atomic swaps. So Ethereum atomic swaps on their way, which is pretty cool. Way to go. It's pretty dope. And now we get into the story of what's been going on the last couple of days. Some people are saying Bitcoin is broken. You have a lot of skepticism now out there amongst people with laser eyes in their profile pics where they're just like, hey, is this actually going to work? Like, this actually seems kind of crazy. People are like, no. Your eyes are deceiving you. All of your senses are deceiving you. Your survival instinct and every capacity for innate logic that you have. Don't listen to it. It's going to be fine. High fees, slow transaction costs. It's exactly what we want. So we'll get to that in a sec. So I think this was one of the first posts that I saw on this whole matter. And again, laser eyes, right? He says, Bitcoin is under DOS attack. And his name is Proof of Jogi, I think is his name, just a site. He says, Bitcoin is under a denial of service attack. High transaction fees are the chosen pain point by the attacker, probably to make Bitcoin unusable for smaller players. We'll define smaller players, right? I mean, wasn't this built for the Rothschild bros to just send JPEG dick pics to each other? Isn't that what it's for? But no. You'll see the responses. They'll say, it's not under attack, it's working as it's designed. Now, if you look at the meme pool picture here, the average wait time is about like 30 minutes, right? And if you want to get to the head of the line, you're going to pay $8. Now, that was on May 7th. And I think just yesterday it got to like $30, $40 if you wanted to get to the front of the line. And if it's no priority, you can pay $1.50, which is still like 150% more than you would pay if you were to use Monero. But still, that will take you about infinitude because right now you're probably still sitting in the meme pool. But some people were saying like, hey, this isn't working. That's what they're saying when they're saying it's a denial of service attack. They're saying, hey, Bitcoin, it's not working. Like, we need to talk about this. And the fact that you have people disagreeing and saying, no, this is how it works. I mean, has that ever happened in Monero where it's just like, hey, I don't know if this is working right? Like, how can you have that doubt whether or not something is working as it should? Now, you do have those doubts when people are trying to like sync a wallet or something like that. It's like, hey, this is taking forever. It's like, okay, we'll just go to another node or, hey, I just paid, a lot more in transaction costs than I expected would happen. It's like, oh, well, you just ran into a malicious node. This is a structural problem, right? This is structural. And you've got people freaking out. He says, attack highlights 1 gigabyte of meme pool usage. And we don't have to go through all that. And, he's complaining about the ordinals and all that stuff. And he's taking a revolutionary, righteous stance. And he's thinking it's like the government. Oh, we're at the then they fight you stage. And Bitcoin rocks. He says, Bitcoin's not under attack. Working just as it should. Top comment, right? And Kurt, he's like a BSV bro. He says, customers have arrived. Let's destroy them. Right? And so consider this, right? Let's say that it wasn't ordinals. Let's say that this was being adopted by the world, right? Would you be upset? And so this is where you come into the fungibility problem, which we've talked about forever. Because now you have other Bitcoiners judging other Bitcoiners based on what they're doing with the blockchain space. And you're seeing people say, hey, if people are trying to do XYZ with their transactions, they're trying to put JPEGs, into a block, you should not allow that into your, you should not mine that transaction. You shouldn't allow that transaction to go through. So they're actively censoring each other. Okay. Or at least they're considering it, right? I don't know if they're actually going to be able to do it. But the fact that that's even part of the conversation, it's ridiculous, okay? I mean, what true cryptocurrency would even have that as part of the consideration? But, they're saying it's an expensive attack. Well, consider this, right? People were willing to pay during the height of the 2021 bull market, people were willing to pay over $1 million for a JPEG of a rock. Okay, there are a lot of people with big money out there who are willing to do stupid things. And the fact that those people are willing to do stupid things and they can take up that blockchain space, there's nothing you can do about that. That's the whole point of your thing. And if you're somebody who's trying to like feed your family by buying some bread from the local baker bro in El Salvador, hey, sorry, you're gonna have to wait. Somebody's trying to, get their rocks through the system, like somebody's trying to send their dick pic. Like you're gonna have to wait. Like I know you're starving, but this is more important. But that's essentially what's happening, right? Shitcoiners, consider this. Good morning, friends. Pools are about $35,000. Blah blah blah. The DDoS successful. Here's another guy who is saying that the attack is it's on. It's not supposed to work like this. It's an attack. And Matthew Cratter, who we've seen a lot of videos from lately trying to diss on Bitcoin, he's engaged in the debate saying it's not a denial of service attack. It's working just as it should. So it's almost like there's a civil war happening, right? And probably the best take that I've seen so far is, okay, well, if you don't like the way it is, why don't you just fork it, right? It's an open source thing. You can just fork it. And it's true. You can't just fork it, or you can just use another cryptocurrency. See, why would you fork to try to fix something and, cause all that division, cause all that problem? And, why wouldn't you just use another different cryptocurrency? And I think that's probably what most people are opting to do, who see this as an attack or see this as a problem, right? Or they're being gaslit by the true believers. But moving on, hold your panties. It's been designed for this. And then, as you'll see, and there's another example we'll get to, where he backtracks because he doesn't want to seem like he's like a heretic. So he says, it's just hyperbole. I don't actually mean it. I'm not saying it's an attack. I'm just saying, I can't use the blockchain, right? So you can see, that dynamic of going against orthodoxy and being considered a heretic and the social pressures thereof, influencing people's perceptions of what is actually happening in front of them. So then people are bringing up the Ethereum fees, and people are saying, well, if Ethereum fees can be that high, why can't our fees be that high? And so then it's sort of like this inverse fiat race to the bottom, right? So moving forward, everyone's saying, hey, here's the great thing about all of it. Miners are getting paid. This is fantastic. Thank goodness for the miners. We need to save the miners, didn't we? When we've talked forever about who the miners are. The miners are, for the most part, are corporations. From what I understand, based on the stats, it's a bunch of corporations that are invested in by the likes of BlackRock and Michael Saylor's group and people like that. So it's either you have you gotta either have high transaction costs. So how do I want to say this? Because it's either you're going to have to pay the miners, who are the big corporates, or you're going to have to be on board to a custodial layer 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 solution, which is probably also going to be owned by some other corporate entity, all of which are invested in by Mastercard, Visa, BlackRock, and the likes. That's probably just going to be what happens. We all know this, don't we? That is what is going to happen. Because if you don't want to pay the high fees, as I said before, you're going to have to go to layer 2s, 3s, 4s, which means more complexity, which means more delegation of the responsibility. Because you don't have the time to do it, or you've got to hire somebody to do it, which means extra costs, which means less viability of this actually working as money. Right? And from what I saw, people were using Lightning Network during all of this, and they were having significant problems. So the infrastructure isn't even laid out yet. And when people were able to have a transaction go through, they were paying still 50 cents to $1, which isn't a lot compared to $25, but that's still a lot compared to Monero. Because as you'll see over in another tab that I've got for you, You've got people like Vic from Cake Wallet sending $6,000 and paying a fraction of a penny with Monero. And because of dynamic block size, we can actually have a lot of adoption and transaction fees can stay low. Like, why would you even settle for this when you've got Monero as an option? Like, the discrepancy is really becoming a chasm. And it's really causing a lot of cognitive dissonance where it's like, okay, I don't even, like, why wouldn't I just use Monero? Why isn't everyone just going into Monero? In this particular sphere of crypto where they've actually kind of figured this stuff out. They've planned ahead. Tail emission, dynamic block size, fungibility and privacy, stealth addresses. And as we're about to get to, they're going to want to tax Bitcoin miners. There's a proposition that came out from the White House where they want to tax Bitcoin miners on the electricity that they use. And you know the reason, right? Climate change, world's going to end if we don't, right? The whole thing. So if you're an A6 miner and you've got a bunch of these things stacked up and they have the technologies to figure out like who's doing this just based on like heat radiation and stuff like this, well, how are you going to earn money mining? Unless, of course, you comply with the rules and regulations which create a barrier entry, which only ensures that the miners that you're paying the high fees to, thank goodness for the miners, are a bunch of corporates which are invested in by ESG bros like BlackRock. So what a wonderful life for the Bitcoin bros coming. So here is a practical example of what the consequences of this are, because a lot of people are just talking on Twitter. They barely use this stuff. They just stack sats every morning, and they don't even consider real-world implications of what it is they're advocating for. But Marce Romero says, I'm in El Salvador right now. Just witnessed a cash withdrawal with Bitcoin. This individual had to pay $20 in fees for getting $100 out in a country where the average salary is $300 to $350. Crazy. I want you to think about this when enabling gambling on freaking JPEGs. So she blames the JPEGs. There's no conscious, there's no consideration of the fact that there's something fundamentally wrong with the blockchain and the philosophy that has endorsed the blockchain to become what it is today. It's the problem of people who just have money laying around who want to have some fun, right? And then this turns into a tragedy of the commons type thing, right? Where you're judging everybody else based on what they're doing with their money when really I thought this was supposed to be like some kind of hyper-libertarian thing where it's just like you're supposed to do what you want. Like I have no control or judgment as to what you do because as long as you're not hurting anybody else, then what's the problem? But they could redefine hurting other people by increasing transaction fees on a blockchain that they all agreed to stupidly use, right? And stupidly adopt in a country where the average salary is $300 and $350. Brilliant. So, yep. Real world consequences. Lily, $25 is a small price to pay for censorship resistant transactions. And then Inevitable XMR makes the obvious retort. High transaction fees being prioritized is a form of censorship. Right? Because if you can't get your transaction through, I guess in a way it is a censorship resistant transaction. Well, it's not, because you don't have the money to have the censorship resistant transaction, so you can't have the transaction to begin with, and therefore you are censored. And that kind of ties into what this guy was saying, where he says Bitcoin transaction fees are the spam control. So just imagine you're in El Salvador. Again, you're at the Baker Bros house and you're trying to get some bread, and you're like, dude, my transaction's not going through. I'm so sorry. And this guy right here is calling you spam. Like you're trying to feed your family. And this dude's like the SS of crypto, Bitcoin bro SS squad. We must get rid of the spam. The poor Africans trying to feed their family are spam, according to Clark Moody. Now, I know what he means. I'm not trying to portray what he's trying to say in a way that he didn't mean, but you could interpret it that way, and it's kind of funny, right? Because how do you know there's spam? again, the subjective valuation is coming into the equation, right? How do you know somebody isn't having fun with the blockchain? How do you know somebody isn't just testing something? Like, how can you tell? So there's that. Let's see some more freakouts of the situation. Crypto T, some hot 20-year-old entertainer who's got a bunch of followers, way more than me. Guess I'm just not hot enough. But she says there are 400,000 pending transactions on the Bitcoin network. And Binance halted transactions due to the congestion and high fees. I've been warning multiple people of this for months, and righteous Bitcoin maxis have kept their mouths shut. They can't admit Bitcoin has any flaws. Of course it doesn't have flaws. Didn't you know it was immaculately conceived by Lord Satoshi? And there was a guy out there, and apparently he's one of like the purveyors of this problem because he was behind the ordinal scripting and Taproot and all that stuff in that update. And he's like, I don't really care what Satoshi wants. We haven't heard the guy forever. Like, yeah, things change, things evolve. Like, he didn't make the perfect blockchain, whatever. And you should have seen the responses. It's like, who's this guy think he is? He should be exorcised from the community. We should have like a public exorcism of the bro. And yeah, like people just went nuts, right? And that ties into the whole religious orthodoxy thing. I want to tell the truth. Bitcoin has an exploit, needs to be fixed ASAP. So yeah, she's clamoring for this thing to be fixed. She's upset about the monkeys being uploaded, the JPEGs. This community is supposed to be strong enough to handle quantum attacks, but watching it be defenseless to JPEGs is embarrassing. And we'll get to some responses of this. She says maybe some centralization is good. So here we see the goalpost moving, right? Where it's like, okay, well, with this being the case, I guess we're going to have to assume that we're going to have some custodianship, right? Because a lot of people just aren't going to be able to afford this, which means we're going to have to have economies of scale when it comes to transactions in the Lightning Network, right? To make it cheap for everybody, we've got to, have a little bit of centralization and some scale. Because this is an obvious problem that should have been fixed by now. Hoping the nodes and miners come together to solve this, but I fear greed has gotten in the way. I don't even think it's greed. I think it's honestly like a religious fervor. But yeah, greed takes a part of it too, obviously. This demand may be good for price in the short term, but it simply does not scale. See, this is what's going to happen, though. You're going to get to a point, and we're not even at the 2024 halving yet, where the subsidy is going to be cut in half again for the Bitcoin miners. And then fees, like this is going to be normal, if not the base layer, the baseline. If there is a change to the Bitcoin blockchain, which is like fundamental. So you've got maybe like tail emission, which is introduced, which Peter Todd has been clamoring for a long time. He's given that credence to the Monero bros, saying that we were right in establishing that. Or you increase the block size and essentially admit defeat to Roger Ver and the bros in the 2017 block size wars. What you do at that point is you underlie the only value proposition left for Bitcoin, which is that it doesn't change. And it's like digital gold. They're so far behind the curve of evolutionary adoption in the space, and their philosophy has been wrong for so long that if they give up that last piece of value that they have, perceived value, that it doesn't change, and that it could be a global settlement layer and there's no risk in not changing it, right, then it's over, right? At that point, why wouldn't people just use other cryptocurrencies? Because if it's admitted that, oh, well, cool, you can make updates to the code and it's not going to break everything, and you can just make it more private, you can make it more scalable, blah blah blah. Why wouldn't I just go to another crypto which has been doing that for years, something like Monero, something like Zano, and then you'll have a flood out of the crypto at that point. Especially if you introduce tail emission. I mean, if you get rid of that 20 million cap, I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I'm just saying if you do. And then she ends with this statement: I'm researching privacy coins in the meantime, since you can't track each coin to do stupid stuff like this, which is interesting, right? So all the Monero bros pounced. They said, Monero, check it out. You're exactly right. Yeah. So that's happening. Yeah, more people are looking to alternatives. Of course they are. So I'm at 50 minutes. Boo, boo. Just want to make sure I'm recording. And let's get to Dylan LeClaire, Bitcoin bro general. He says Bitcoin isn't here to displace. Well, that's another thing I want to get to. He said something else I want to get to. Here we go. So this is his response to everybody who's been saying, hey, this is kind of a problem. He says, Bitcoin has a security budget problem. Fees aren't sufficient. It needs tail emissions. Bitcoin has a throughput problem. Fees are too high. It needs bigger blocks. These are quotes, by the way. These are critiques of the blockchain. And so this is just another person who can't hold these two ideas together as a starting point in understanding what the constraints of the system are so that you could have a conversation about cost benefit, give take, opportunity cost, and that kind of thing. Your inherent desire for human intervention at every turn is exactly what Bitcoin solved. So going back to our prior point, Bitcoin solved, according to him, the problem of people tampering with money, right? The fiat problem. People printing money, people, not playing fair by the rules and changing the rules of money and then screwing everything up. Nobody has exactly said why it is gold didn't have that property before, but I'm not entirely sure. But he says, please just shut up. But before you read my response, I don't know if my response is visible, but what would you say is the proper response to this? Like, do you see the problem in the logic here? He says, your inherent desire for human intervention at every turn is exactly what Bitcoin solved. Is Bitcoin not a human intervention? Would be my first question. Of course it is. Right? I mean, to say that it's not a human intervention would be to, again, fall into a kind of orthodox religious approach where it's like Satoshi is like a lord, right? Or something like that. And maybe he forgot that Bitcoin also had a huge inflation problem. Like there's a huge inflation bug at some point back in, I think it was like 2013 that was discovered. And it was fixed before it became a problem, but it was fixed. There was human intervention. So the question at this point for Dylan is what level of human intervention is appropriate in order to solve problems? Because people are seeing problems, and he's not addressing that problem, right? He's just saying you wanting to solve the problem is a problem. That's what he's saying. You're trying to solve the problem by saying that the code needs to change is the problem. But the code has changed in the past in response to problems. So that precedent is already broken, right? And so the question at that point is, how much intervention is necessary to fix what problems? And this is when you get into nuanced thinking. But I see very little nuanced thinking on my feed. Very little. Like people just cannot have debates about what problems should be solved, what problems just should be left alone to just be a part of the reality of living with this blockchain, right? It's just, no, it's the perfect blockchain. Just shut up and go away, right? And I don't know how you can invest in a system where the people who are holding the system up and keeping it relevant are people like this. I mean, it's really concerning, right? So let's get to an exchange that I found to be jaw-dropping at the time until I had this, kind of revelation with this philosophical thing that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to read this for you guys because this is pretty crazy. So just a crazy crypto dude, laser eyes. He starts to panic. He says, how does this support adoption when fees are $20 in countries where the average salary is $500 a year? Okay, good question. And then John Radcliffe says smugly, I'm guessing you're new around here. Didn't you know money is supposed to have transactions of $20? So he says Bitcoin is a settlement layer. Okay, so new definitions coming into the work. He says it will transition to a fee-based security to replace the block reward so that we can maintain the guarantee of only 21 million Bitcoin total. In the future, the average Bitcoin transaction will be for a massive amount of value, hundreds of thousands of dollars with high fees. So he's telling him, yes, it's going to get higher than $20 a transaction. In fact, that's probably going to be nothing. Payment transactions will happen on different network layers, each offering different security models and trade-offs. Other layers will include things like Lightning Network, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Federated sidechains, perhaps someday non-federated decentralized sidechains, and get this, mainstream payment services like Visa and Mastercard. So Visa and Mastercard apparently are still going to be in the mix. Apparently they're still going to be collecting fees on you, and they're still going to be pretty much ruling the world because everybody knows Mastercard is chaired by pretty much people from the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, people from the Fed. I mean, these are the exact people that you're trying to fight, right? These are the exact people you're trying to make irrelevant. But with Bitcoin, according to this bro, these people are still going to be in control because you're going to have to use them. Like, this guy is telling this guy who's concerned about high transaction fees, hey, you're going to have to use MasterCard. I know that you bought Bitcoin with the anticipation that you're getting out of the system and you're rebelling against the system, which is pretty much run by the like of MasterCard. You got to use MasterCard, dude. You're just too poor. Like, have fun staying poor and using MasterCard with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is not a payment network. He says this. Bitcoin is not a payment network. It's a network responsible for issuing and securing the currency, like a Federal Reserve type system. Okay. Astonishing, right? So he says that when Bitcoin is adopted as a settlement layer, you are going to be using MasterCard, and you're pretty much going to be engaging with another type of Federal Reserve system. He says it right there. And this comment had like 56 likes, and it had all these Bitcoin bros saying, yeah, I've never seen it put like this before. This should be inscribed into stone. I mean, this is amazing. And he finishes off, he says, you have to separate the currency Bitcoin from payment rails, just as central banks issue and manage currencies but do not handle payments. I mean, that's astonishing. Gombat Fire, he responds, Bitcoin is not a payment network, quote unquote. Satoshi is rolling in his grave. And it says on top of the white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So it's like they worship Satoshi, right? And they see Bitcoin as being the best cryptocurrency ever. Nothing could ever match Bitcoin. It's immaculate. Except the way that they're selling Bitcoin now is completely different than how it was presented initially by their so-called Lord. So, again, it's just crazy people, dude. I mean, I don't know how else to put this. This is just freaking wild. And here's the problem. After 2021 and 2022, with the collapse of the crypto price, everyone going broke, the Celsius scam, the FTX collapse, the Terra Luna debacle, and all this other crap, you've got faith in cryptocurrency amongst the public at like an all-time low. You've got gold, which has been gaining against Bitcoin, has been looking really quite well. You have central banks across the world continuing to buy copious amounts of gold at record-breaking levels. You've got the people who have cracked down on cryptocurrency already and will probably continue to crack down on it in the future, currently overtaking U.S. hegemony. Talking about India, talking about China, talking about Russia. These are not crypto-friendly countries. They're not going to let you have your Bitcoin in your own self-hosted wallet. Okay. How is it possible that in this environment you're going to sell people on Bitcoin as being revolutionary technology that you should risk your life for, by the way, because it's not private at all, and everyone's going to see you buy it, and the feds are going to come to your house to get it probably. Maybe not probably. Maybe I'm being over-exaggerating, but still. How are you going to sell it to your average person saying, oh, don't worry about the $25 average transaction cost? That's actually cheap relative to what's going to be. Like, are you serious? How is it possible that you can sell that to people? You can't. It's ridiculous. And the reason that I am spending this time trying to break this down for people and explain just how ridiculous this is because this makes our job harder. This makes the job of Roger Ver selling people on crypto harder. Like, these people make it more difficult for the rest of us because they don't understand the philosophical differences at play here in the crypto world. They just think like everybody kind of agrees on what crypto is. All cryptos are generally the same. You've got some funny meme ones. You've got some ones over here which are a little more private. Then you got some ones over here which are more like gold-like and whatever. But it's just like cryptocurrency. It's just like a general thing. And if you go up to somebody who's seen everything that's happened in the last couple of years, and then they see transactions like $25 on average for like the Bitcoin de jure that everyone talks about and raves about, they're going to think you're an idiot if you use this stuff and you try to onboard them to it. Like, I just had a client who I did his bookkeeping cleanup. I did his books, and he's new to crypto completely. And I told him that, hey, you could still have the 5% discount if you pay me in Bitcoin, right? Because he didn't know how to get to Monero. And I tried to explain it to him, and I said, "Hey, use Trade Ogre, blah blah blah, or go to Cake Wallet." He's like, "Dude, I don't want to set up some separate wallet. Like, I just want to make this easy." It's just like, okay, well, just set up a Coinbase account and just send me whatever you buy on there. I should have said Litecoin, but I was like, buy Bitcoin. I was just trying to make it as easy as possible for him. Okay, he's now in a 2-week waiting period because you have to go through all this KYC, obviously, which sucks, but I'm going to have him send me what he owes me and then take a $25 cut. He's going to say, why do you even accept this stuff? Now, I told him initially, if you want the 5% discount, you're going to use Monero. But I tried to make it easy for him. You've got to start somewhere with people. And now he's just going to be like, dude, this is kind of whack, right? But now I'm going to have to explain, no, that's Bitcoin. Everyone's diluted for using it. It doesn't work as money. Like, people are off on their own freaking adventure with that thing. Just use Monero. Like, that's what actually uses cryptocurrency. And, like, the fact that I have to go through those extra steps to explain that crypto is not supposed to be like how it is these people are presenting it makes my job harder for the adoption of crypto. And that's why I think it's a healthy thing for us to come out here and say, hey, this is actually kind of crazy. Because this guy responded to this, our bro, Crazy Crypto Dude, he responded to this and said, oh, you know what? I learned something new every day. Like, thanks for clarifying. So he was gaslit totally into thinking that this is acceptable. And again, it's just a very bad PR for the entire space. But moving forward, let's move forward. You got people like this, again, saying high fees are good for Bitcoin. Just imagine trying to sell people that. It's just crazy. And we're going to end this segment with the doom phase because the bro down here, he offers his own take on everything going on. NVK, which, by the way, got into it with Sefer Prophecy because he was, being heretical towards Bitcoin or something like that for saying Monero is still the best payment option and all this stuff. I forgot actually what the debate was, but now he offers his solution, which is layer 3, unironically, right? He says layer 3 and beyond are the only path. Bitcoin base layer will never be available to the poor, even the middle. Says it as clear as day, right there. The revolutionary money, which is supposed to unbank the third world, will never be available to the poor or the middle. The base layer, anyway. Even Lightning, being incredible, has limits. Solutions will be many, but not black and white. So, it says it right there. And this is a guy with like 100,000 followers, 109,000 followers, a prominent Bitcoin bro online. And he says, stuff isn't for poor people unless you want to get on custody layers. In which case, why not just readopt the gold standard at that point, right? Which is like, that's going to be the next debate, right? And like a couple years after this next halving, it's like, well, what's actually better, gold in third-party custody with gold money where you can like just transfer, custody of the assets between the different custodial providers on one big accounting ledger, sort of like what you do with Lightning, or Bitcoin, right? That's going to be the next debate, even though that's at that point just like crypto at that point, at least for Bitcoin, will just be defeated, right? Like you might as well just accept defeat at that point. Because the whole point was peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer electronic cash system has gone bat fire, linked to right here. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Abstract, purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Not Mastercard, not Visa, not JP Morgan, not BlackRock. So, yeah, that's what's going on. Kind of crazy, right? And we're going to get to more stuff here in a sec. But I'm going to take a little break and be right back. We're going to talk about Lightning Network and the failures thereof during the high-fee environment, which is really wild. We're going to take some Bitcoin bros into account. So, be right back. All right, we're back. Let's chat a little bit about the Lightning Network because this is the solution, right? This is the panacea to all the problems being experienced right now by the Bitcoin bros. So let's start with Joel. I think that's how he says his name, or Joel, I forgot. Venezuela. Apparently he lives off crypto, and he runs his own Lightning Network node, so he knows about this stuff. Whenever I try to look for critiques about the Lightning Network, I always try to look for people who use it and people who are devoted to Bitcoin, right? Because I don't want to get biased sources. I really want to understand this stuff to see whether or not this is going to work, because there's $600 billion invested basically in this idea. But Joel Venezuela, he says Bitcoin isn't under attack, quote unquote, it's being used. The Lightning Network is unusable right now. Lots of illusions being shattered. Just want to make sure I'm recording. Okay, yeah. So he says, yeah, illusions being shattered. Let's look at more takes. So Eric Wall, the Taproot wizard, he's one of the guys who is behind Taproot, I guess. Just followed him recently. Don't know too much about him. But he said, mine and this guy's game plan. Step 1, 4 megabyte Taproot block show that Deegan's what's possible. Step 2, Ordinals garbage predictably clogs the chain. Step 3, Lightning finally has a use case. We finally have to prepare wallet infrastructure for mass adoption. Security budget also solved. Now, I don't know if he's trolling or whatever, but this guy Hampus, Laser Eyes, so Bitcoin bro, he says Lightning completely ceases to work if in a high-fee environment. And he cites something from like the Stack Exchange. And then he says, because HTLCs below the dust limit won't be possible to settle on chain. So if the transaction fee is $100, it means every payment under $100 will be trusted and secure. We need to talk about scaling. So he says that the Layer 2 solution, which was established to fix high base layer transaction fees, doesn't work if there are high base layer transaction fees. I mean, help me understand this. And I actually made a tweet where I said, can somebody tell me if I'm missing something? The purpose of Lightning Network, I thought, was to circumvent high fees on Layer 1, but if fees get too high on Layer 1, Layer 2 doesn't work? I don't understand. And I genuinely don't understand. Because, yeah, I knew about the centralization problems. I knew about the privacy problems. But I didn't know it was a complete contradiction. And I didn't know it was this bad. So this bro says, welcome to the Lightning Network rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks. And this guy said, Lightning Network was not meant to circumvent high fees. It was only meant to serve as a distraction while Blockstream blocked the stream for their own TradFi overlords. And that is one of the theories going back to like 2017 was they're trying to keep the block size small so that they can come up with their own solutions that you'd have to use in this kind of environment, like Liquid Network, for instance, Lightning. And I have seen some people talk about Liquid, and I think we did a video on Liquid. It's like a federation of bros who run that thing. But yeah, one guy joked, we need Layer 3. And I quoted to him what it is I just read to you guys, where one prominent Bitcoin bro is like, yeah, we're going to need layer 3 and beyond. So layer 4, 5, 6. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I got a lot of engagement on this, people offering their takes, because obviously this is an important subject. It's like, is this going to work or not? Because if it's not, then we got problems. And so this guy, Anita, Bitcoin for Fairness, true believer, he says, can anyone explain how I'm going to onboard people with these fees? Can't use on-chain, can't open channels. Makes custodial Lightning the only option. This is a true believer saying this. Okay, he's an educator, an author. Apparently, he's big in Africa, trying to get the Africa bros on board. Not even joking with you. He's like, how am I supposed to do this? And all that because some people think it's fun to, quote unquote, break Bitcoin. Okay, they're using Bitcoin, right? That's all they're doing. They're using Bitcoin. And our bro Paul, cool friend of the channel, he says, Anita, how many times have I told you Bitcoin security model doesn't work to onboard unbanked people in the long term? We can have a podcast either in German, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you do your Monero, I do what I want to do. Okay, so, yeah, bit of denial here. I really don't see why you wouldn't just use Monero. But, hey, you do what you want to do. I mean, there probably is a lot more engagement for being a Bitcoin bro than being a Monero bro. Like Seth for Privacy, he's got like 21,000 followers, right? And the guy's a freaking brilliant genius. And like, I learn something every time I see one of his posts. But like your average Bitcoin bro out here, they've got like, 50,000, 100,000 or more subscribers or followers. Like that's where the engagement is, right? So that's why a lot of people want to talk about it because, that makes you popular. And Leah Hepburn, she's very popular now. She wasn't even like that big a deal just a few years ago. And just a few years ago, she was making videos on Monero. You can go find them. But has she talked about Monero at all over the last couple of years? No, not really, because that's not where the engagement is, right? And if I'm wrong about that, let me know. But she's talking about Bitcoin. She wrote a book on Bitcoin, right? Because that's where the interest is. So moving on, let's see some more takes. Nikita is a Russian guy. He says, spoiler, they won't figure this out. And what is he quoting? I guess an atomic swap Bitcoin exchange to go off. He says our on-chain working capital is all locked up in the meme pool, and swaps are starting to fail. A disabled swap service is better than a failing swap service. Yeah, so scaling Bitcoin with Lightning is a fundamentally broken approach, this guy says. And this guy's a lead developer at Blockchair and some other stuff. He teaches blockchain at local universities, so he knows his stuff apparently. And he says, no scaling at all, as we can see. Once blocks are full, Lightning stops working too. So that's what a lot of people are saying. You can't have layer 2 solutions if the layer 1 is broken. That's essentially what they're saying, which is what Monero Bros have been saying forever. And that's what they've been saying in regards to privacy. If you don't have default layer privacy, then you're not going to have layer 2 privacy. Like you can't make layer 1 private with layer 2 solutions. Which is something that we've talked about ever since the beginning with like Dash and with Zcash and everything like that, which has like solutions on top of the base layer. And, one, I think, thing to keep in mind as just a truism, I think, in the crypto sphere is it's better to have default privacy and optional transparency rather than default transparency and optional privacy, because the privacy just isn't going to work as well if it's that way, right? And it's really not even going to be optional privacy as much as it is just like expensive and selective privacy, because you just got to hope the ISR doesn't come on you. And as somebody gets to here, to try to do Whirlpool and to try to do coin joins right now with this high fee environment, it's going to cost you like $70 to actually mix your coins through that entire mess, just to try to get some privacy. And we've gone through like a dozen stories here on the channel where like people still get caught after using all that stuff. Like some of these schemes that some of these criminals come up with to send their Bitcoin through like other privacy coins like Grin, or they send it through like coin joins and then send it to another mixer, blah, blah, blah. Like they still get caught. And it's kind of crazy. But to even try to do that, it's going to cost you like $70, $100 in this kind of environment. So crazy. So privacy, you're not even going to afford it, especially if you're on the layer 2, which isn't really that private. And this guy, he rebuts. He says, don't spread lies and FUD. Lightning hasn't stopped working. And then he says, all of these quote-unquote applications, including opening and closing Lightning channels in general, rely on bad fee estimation, quote-unquote. The problem is that there is no good fee estimation possible. That's unsolvable, and that's why apps move to other chains. So these people know more than I do about Lightning. And I'm just deferring to what they're saying. And they're Bitcoin bros who are saying, yeah, this isn't working. So, Body Anarchist always has some good takes. Give him a follow. He says, they said there is no main chain capacity problem for Lightning Network, but now many Lightning channels are stuck. They said there was no security budget problem with Bitcoin, but now it has been fixed. They said it was the perfect money, but now it's 90% NFTs and crap coins. Right. And Zano, he says, the future of Bitcoin is being pushed towards KYC regulation-friendly liquidity channels that only accept certain wallets because the base layer is broken. Right. Everyone sees now that's where this is going. Right. I think everyone can see that, clear as day. And my response to all this is goalposts have moved so much that it seems a lot of people have just accepted third-party custody as a foregone conclusion. The halvings came too soon, the adoption not soon enough. And there really was this race for adoption, right? Because when you still had a big subsidy, you had cheap transactions, you had the opportunity to onboard a whole bunch of people, show them how it works, you had the opportunity to build the layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 infrastructure if you wanted to, show them how it works, make it simple, and onboard people through opening channels and stuff. And I ran the math a long time ago as far as like how long it would take to upload everybody onto the Lightning Network, assuming not custody solutions. And it was going to take like 20 years to get everybody onboarded to the Lightning Network because of the small block size and just how many channels you have to open and everything like that. And that was before the Ordinals problem. Now I just don't see how it could possibly occur unless it's like total custodian. Like somebody give me an alternative point of view. Like help me understand how this works because I just don't see it. I really don't understand. So to that poll I talked to you about earlier in the video, if third-party custody is given, which system would you prefer? Most people are saying gold standard. Now, I know these are my people. 100 votes, not a big sample size. But I think all of us would prefer that, right? Because at least with gold, you can take custody of it, and it wouldn't cost you a lot of money. You wouldn't have to close a channel. When you go to a bank to get your gold, like what would be the surcharge of that? Or you go to get your silver, what would be the surcharge of that? Would it be $50? Would it be $100? No. And it's not like you're going to be tracked and traced from the bank to everywhere you go and everywhere you spend that money. You're just going to have your money. You can do whatever you want with it. So why wouldn't you want the gold standard? I think everybody would obviously want that. And so here's Will Clemente. And if you watch the video of this guy, he looks like Slim Shady. He just looks like Slim Shady, dude. I don't know if he's trying to do that, but I commented on one of his videos. I said, Dear Slim, can you explain how you're going to have Lightning Network adoption that isn't totally custodial based and centralized when it costs $50 to open and close channels? And I said that on a video, and he blocked me. What's up, dude? He says nothing because he blocked me. And that's the response I get every time, is either they ignore my rebuttal or they just block me. And that's the case for a lot of Monero bros too. And they say that you're a Monero reply guy if you want to respond to people with the same rebuttals that they never address. You're just a reply guy, right? Because you're a heretic. They don't want to even acknowledge your existence. So, moving on. Houndahausen, he says, how much would a coin join cost at the moment to transfer that same amount with similar privacy and anonymity on the Bitcoin network? Now, you don't get the same anonymity and privacy. But I think South for Privacy somewhere responds and says $70. Oh, this is in response to Vic saying, yeah, I just spent $6,000 for less than a penny. I think that's half of a penny, not even half of a penny. Peace of mind, not worrying about dirty coins. Crazy. And we say crazy, but it's not even that crazy. That should be normal for cryptocurrency. That's the whole point of it. But it's crazy compared to what people are dealing with Bitcoin, obviously. So Bitcoin. Yeah, so with Bitcoin, only the rich have the privilege to have privacy. That seems to be going to be happening if this is adopted. And here's a story from May 3rd, earlier, either in the week or last week. White House proposes 30% tax on electricity used for Bitcoin and crypto mining. Okay. So on top of the fees already being super high and all these miners making all this money, you're probably going to have income taxes go up on corporations. I think that's the base case. I mean, the TICJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, passed in 2017, lowered the corporate tax rate quite a lot to 21%. So the corporates are paying less money, which is good if you're a corporate Bitcoin miner. But if taxes go back up and then you've got to deal with this stuff, then fees are going to go up for everybody because that cost gets passed down to everybody. And yeah, in that case, RandomX for Monero looks amazing because you can just mine it with your laptop. Nobody knows you're doing it. And Zarkanum, the proof of stake model, looks really good. And we've talked about here on the channel why it is Ethereum moved to proof of stake. And I think it's because they anticipated this whole environmental thing. We've made a lot of videos on that, but if you move to proof of stake, you get to move away from that level of scrutiny. And that's a whole other thing that we could talk about forever. But go check out those vids. We make the case why the ESG bros really like proof of stake cryptocurrencies and don't really like proof of work. So this guy, and this is where the understanding of the Bitcoin bros is still at. This is where they're at. Okay, so he acknowledges. So this is what he says. Price of Bitcoin transactions is around $5 now. Lightning Network adoption is still super slow. Mass adoption maximalist down bad. So he's saying, yeah, this is a problem, guys. And he's a Bitcoin bro. Star of the beast, use Bitcoin, right? Star of Mastercard, right? And then he says, next cycle, most entrants will stick to meme coins. But here is the saving grace for the Bitcoin bro. At least Bitcoin will remain a tool for a minority of ANCAPs, tech geeks, tax dodgers, and criminals. So, did he not get the memo? Did he not hear about Monero? Did he not understand that use of Bitcoin on darknet marketplaces, use of Bitcoin amongst like the ANCAP bros is precipitously going down, and the demographic has completely changed? Because all these people are now into Monero, and they've been for years. So, he's just got to get the hint. And I kind of let him know that you're still in 2013 and you need to kind of step it up. But some people are just going to be late to the party, right? And just another bad objection. We run into this same thing over and over again. This is one of the things that the person who had commented on my poll with the gold standard versus Bitcoin thing, they had said, well, if the governments are going to adopt either gold or Bitcoin, I want them to adopt Bitcoin because at least I can see what they're doing with the money. And we've talked about that stupid objection over and over and over and over. Like, even if you can see what they're doing with the money, that doesn't mean that you'll have any leverage over them to do anything about it. Okay? It's really as simple as that. Because he acknowledges, this person who posted on this thing, I'm not going to go to it, but he says, they failed so many audits over and over and over again. Okay, and what's been the consequence? Nothing. So if you can't administer consequences, it doesn't matter if you can see crime. It doesn't matter if you can see corruption. If you can't administer consequences, seeing that stuff doesn't mean anything. And that's what these people apparently don't get. But this guy said he didn't want everybody to adopt Monero and didn't want the government to adopt Monero. Not that any of us are even thinking in that way. I've never seen Monero Bro saying, yeah, I can't wait for the government to adopt Monero, even though it obviously has use cases for them, for black ops and stuff like that. But his main gripe against Monero after this debate that we had, where he changed goalposts predictably, right, was, well, if the government adopts Monero, how am I going to be able to see what they're doing with the money? First off, How many of you read the financial reports of the government departments and agencies? Nobody. Literally nobody does. Even if you dig back to the original argument, you're not going to do anything about it because nobody cares at the end of the day. If you're in a nation of like 300 million people, of people who are just trying to strive to survive and are watching the game, and you're sitting in your room looking at Bitcoin transactions, trying to scribble together some financial report comprising of probably tens of millions of transactions, it's like, dude, you're just going to be some lone spike-haired, eye bag drooping nut. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to be this guy over here. Like, you're going to be... Where's Doomer Bro? Where's Doomer Bro? Yeah, you're going to be Doomer Bro. So, you just got to let the government do whatever they're going to do. And really, what this guy misses is that if the government doesn't have privacy, you're not going to have privacy. And the government has the leverage over you, not the other way around. Okay? But you all are smart. I'm speaking to the choir. You guys know that. So, let's move on. Just a couple more tabs and we'll be through. Hope you guys have enjoyed the first video back. It's been really nice. I've never thought I'd hear Bitcoiners claim Bitcoin is more private than Monero, yet here we are. See, that's how bad down these guys are. Alan B. Watts, the biggest issue with Monero is it has a tiny anonymity set compared to Bitcoin. I mean, how do you even respond to that? Ignore the fact that chain analytics offers lightning tracing. Monero is actually private, yeah. And I'm not going to go into explaining how Monero is private. If I've done it 1,000 times, go check out the prior videos. But this is from Vanessa Harris. Great stuff. Give her a follow. She's got a lot of great takes. And, yep, now you're seeing the ordinals come to Litecoin. Good luck. And at some point in another video, I'll get to responding to Matthew Cratter's videos against Monero. Because there was sort of like this online debate that he got engaged with and made like 3 videos in sequence of each other talking about the problems with Monero. And it was actually a pretty invigorating debate. I kind of enjoyed it. And I have a whole response here if you want to read it to his one video that he did, Bitcoin versus Monero, It's War. And I think it's a good read. He made some good points, get some good rebuttals. And he follows me now. So he sees all of my posts and hopefully he watches this video. And maybe does a rebuttal to this. That'd be great. So that is that, ladies and gentlemen. So thanks for tuning in. Hour and a half. I think that's a good size video. That's what we typically do, I think. But yeah, leave comments, like the video. You all know the basic stuff. Maybe I'll get a sponsor back on the channel. Maybe I'll get Cake Wallet back to give me support because they're doing a lot of great work. And if you're not like on Cake Wallet, you're kind of missing out because they're really the revolutionary wallet in crypto right now. I mean, they're just doing so much great work. It's crazy. So I think that's all I want to say. Hope you guys enjoyed the vid. More to come, hopefully. And God bless. Monero Mateo, out.